roundup of all of the books I read in January. I read 5 total books, have started many others, but I completed 5 books in January, which is pretty good. Last year, however, I did read 10, and that's because we had a lot of snow and I ended up having a week where all I could do was stay at home and read, basically. And so that really affected my ability to crank out some books. So I'm pretty impressed by 5, considering it was a fairly normal month. We had a little bit of snow, but nothing nearly like we did last year. And so my plate was still pretty full, and I managed to read 5 books, some of which were kind of long. And so I feel pretty good about that. My goal this year is once again to read 50 throughout the entire year. And so we'll see if we're on the right track. I mean, we are mathematically, but I'm always a little nervous that once things get busy, it's going to be hard to sit down and read, because I really struggle to read in small bursts. I really enjoy full days worth of reading and hours of reading, and that's just like not practical. And so, you know, we do what we can. We're working on building some habits that help us read a little bit more. I do think my Kindle has helped that. I think I've said that before. I thought that was going to happen. My Kindle definitely helps me read in smaller bursts, and it also helps me read faster. Well, anyway, let's get to the books that I read this year. I thought about going in order that I read, but I think instead I'm gonna start with my fiction books and end with nonfiction. And so we'll start with what I read on my Kindle this month, and that is Fourth Wing. What can I say? I'm just like every other girl, and I'm reading books about dragons, and I like them, okay? And I didn't really know how I was gonna feel about Fourth Wing. I've obviously heard amazing things, and I enjoy books like A Court of Thorns and Roses and all that kind of stuff. And so I figured this would be right up my alley. And I did really enjoy it. I think as we're getting further in the series, I'm currently in the middle of Iron Flame. I see the gripes people have with it. I understand why maybe it's not the best and maybe not the most well written. It's definitely got a lot of characters, but as you get into it, it's kind of hard to remember who they are because they've got weird names, and the context she gives for them isn't always necessarily the best. And so that's kind of difficult, but I enjoyed the premise. I've really enjoyed the world and the way that she's built it. And that is credit to the author. Even if some things are confusing, she's built a really cool world. Obviously, if you don't know anything about it, I'm not very good at giving reviews without spoiling, and so I'm going to keep it very simple and straightforward. We have our female main character who, she is not as likable as I want her to be, but she could be much worse, and so we're tolerating her. She obviously is just so cute and so frail and whatnot, and so that is kind of rough, but I'm pretty sure there's like a reason. I don't know, I get a little confused. But she's not my favorite, but I can tolerate her. Another gripe I have with this book is that Xaden calls her Violence as like a cute pet name because her name is Violet. I don't like that, and he does it all the time. So I don't enjoy that. But I like where we're going. I like the dragons of it all. I like the bonding of it all. I like the main conflict and the war that's going on, and how there's clearly so much going on with their families and that dynamic. So it's intriguing. It's a very good book. I am excited to finish Iron Flame. I have probably like 30% more of that to read, so we'll review that at the end of February. And then Onyx Storm came out this month, and so that is something to consider. These books are free on Kindle Unlimited, so I don't know when Onyx Storm is gonna hop in there, if it will, and so I'm probably gonna hold out for that. A lot of people were like, no, you're gonna want to pick it right up, and maybe I will, but I have a pretty good ability to set down a series and come back if I want to, so I anticipate that happening. I gave Fourth Wing 4 stars, which is kind of what I anticipate giving Iron Flame as well. Again, a really fascinating book. I'm really captivated by it, but I was not like, this changed my life, blown away, not like anything I've read before kind of book. So it got 4 stars for me. I do recommend it. I do think if you like the fantasy genre, that's definitely my genre, the romance fantasy. I will say though, I don't think this series compares to Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows. That, my brain keeps going back to that world, and I miss it a little bit. I miss those characters, and so I do have to take breaks from fantasy because it's so easy for me to be like, this one's not as good as that one, or the world is just not as captivating, or I get confused. So I still have Divine Rivals in the back of my brain. But I love Fourth Wing. I'm obviously all in. I'll read the whole series. And I think you should too if you are at all interested in fantasy. The other fiction book I read this month was The Midnight Club. And I read this because my favorite little local bookstore started a new book club. And I usually cannot go to their book clubs regularly because of my job schedule. And that's a big time bummer. But I go to one book club that I helped start, the Silent Book Club, that meets on the last Saturday of every month, and we just sit there and read. It's very like low stakes, and so that was doable for me, so I helped get that one going. But this one, I was able to go to the first meeting, and so I said, I'm gonna buy this book. The Saturday before, it happened on a Thursday, I went in the store and I bought the book, and I read it very fast. It's amazing what you can do when you have a deadline. This book was a page turner for sure. It definitely made you want to keep reading. I don't know what I expected, actually. I figured, based on the description, just this tagline says, 4 friends, a campus reunion, a dark new way to relive the past. And that was giving me a little bit of a Secret History vibes, just like I thought it would be a little bit more dark academia situation, but it was not. You got a little bit of that, I guess, just because they went back to their college campus like 20 or so years down the line. Essentially what happens is when they were in college, one of their friends mysteriously died, and it was never really confirmed how that happened. And so one of their friends pushes them all to get together for a reunion and try to remember how it happened. I don't really want to give away too much. I don't really know even if the description gives away much else, but I will just say it is very interesting. There's some sketchy things that happen in order to remember and whatnot. But it was really interesting. It made you question, like, if you could relive your memories, would you? If you could go back to the past, would you? Nostalgia kind of vibes throughout it. It really makes you think about just like little decisions you make. And my main takeaway from the book was how important it is to say what you're thinking, because most often if you have the boldness to just be honest about what you're thinking about, relationships work out better and you understand each other better. Isn't that crazy? Don't hold things back. So I recommend this book. I gave it 4 stars. I was really intrigued by the story of this author. Apparently she's been writing this book over like 30 something years. So that's just really awesome. I love when people are passionate enough about things to dedicate that kind of time to it. I do wish I could have gotten it in paperback, but all they were selling was hardback. And like I said, we were in a little bit of a rush to get it going. But this book was really good. A little bit stressful, like kind of tense, and it makes you nervy the whole time. Like you just know everyone's lying to each other a little bit. And so if you're like me, you don't do well with lying. And so that is one thing. If you're not into books that kind of make you feel on edge, this probably isn't the book for you. But if you enjoy sort of a mystery style vibe, sort of a whodunit style vibe, I do recommend it. It's a good book. 4 stars. I read 3 nonfiction books this month, which I feel like is kind of rare for me. Sometimes I struggle to read a lot of those in a row, but thinking back to last January, I also did that. I think that's just, everything that's talking at you this time of year is bettering yourself, and I think I subconsciously lean into that even though I don't mean to. And so I read 3 nonfiction books, but they were all pretty good. And even though they're that same kind of genre, they all are a little bit different. They kind of have a different angle to them, and so I didn't get bored, that's for sure. And I feel like I chose wisely books that are really relevant to me at the moment. The first one I read was the first book I read this year. I've had it for a while. It's been sitting on my desk at work, and I brought it home over the holiday and started it like the first of the year. This book is called You're the Worst Person in the World. Yep. I had this on my desk, like I said, and so many people were like, what is that? Why do you have a book called You're the Worst Person in the World? And I kept having to say, I don't know, I haven't read it yet. But it stood out to me because I frequently say this kind of stuff to myself, like, you're the worst, or I'm the worst, I'm so dumb. The tagline of this is why it's the best news ever, that you don't have it together, you aren't enough, and you can't fix it on your own. All things that I try to do. I try to fix things on my own. I try to make myself enough or convince myself that I could ever be enough, or that I should have it together. And the whole point of this book is that we aren't supposed to. And you're the worst person in the world, kind of, because we are the worst. We are sinners, and we need the Lord to help us and to fix us and to get us together, because we can't do it on our own. And so kind of balancing that thought of, you don't have to hate yourself, but you can acknowledge that you're supposed to be bad at things. You're supposed to be the worst at things. It's actually probably good that you are, because that points you to remember that only He sustains you, only He makes us who we are. So I enjoyed it. It probably could have been written better. I think I gave it 3 stars. If this is the kind of thoughts that you have about yourself, then this is definitely the book for you. If you're like, I don't really ever think about that, then that's probably fine. It's not like a must read. But I think if this is a thought pattern that you find yourself in, like I do, this book is pretty good in kind of just helping think through those thoughts. I love a peppermint tea. There's just something about it. Okay, so we've got Fourth Wing, we've got Midnight Club, we've got You're the Worst Person in the World. The next book I read is a book called Thirsting, Quenching Our Soul's Deepest Desire. This was a book that I read because I thought one of the small groups at the ministry that I help lead was going to read it, and so I like to read the books that they read so I know what's going on. And then they decided not to. And that's okay. But I read it anyway. I really enjoyed the topic of this book. I think sometimes it got a little in the weeds, and the author had a tendency to overuse the metaphors that he was using and like get too deep into them to where it was like, you're not really saying anything now. I can see how if that language just like means a lot to you, and the visuals that he used, if that's meaningful to you, how that would not be a problem. But sometimes I would be like, what are we talking about? But essentially his whole point is we have a longing in us for something greater, and sometimes that longing leads us the wrong way if we don't listen to it in the right way. My phone fell. Sorry about that. As I was saying, the main point of this book is that there's a longing in all of us, right? We long for something. We have this feeling that something's missing. We have desires, and we long to fill them. And while in some ways that longing can lead us the wrong direction, it's ultimately supposed to point us back to the Lord, not only because He fulfills our greatest longing and all longings, but because His greatest longing is to be with us and to have us be with Him. And so in our longing, we are reflecting Him. And so there's a lot we can learn about Him by acknowledging those feelings. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, but then also knowing that He is the thing that quenches our deepest desire, as it says. So I really enjoyed this book. If you get really annoyed by wordiness or just overplaying a metaphor, don't read it. I gave it 4 stars because, again, the message is just really good, and that will sell me on a book really fast. I struggle to give a book with the right intent a bad star rating. So Thirsting by Strahan Coleman, I think is how you say it. I might revisit it later, just because, again, I think sometimes you would get so lost in the metaphors that then maybe like some of his points under his main point would get a little lost, but I still thought it was really good. And finally, we have my only 5-star read of the month, highly anticipated. I have been looking at this book in the bookstore for months, and I kind of thought I was gonna get it for Christmas, but I didn't. So I went and bought it myself. And that is this book called 1,000 Words. It's a collection of authors basically writing encouragement to other writers. From what I understand, this was like part of this main author, Jamie Attenberg. She did this like event. I don't, what's the word I'm looking for? This book describes it as a boot camp model online community thing. And the goal was to write 1,000 words a day for a long stretch of time. And so she got all these people to write encouragement to the people doing that, and then compiled them all into this book. And I struggle because I don't like being like, I'm a writer, because I'm not, but then you can't say you're not a writer because you write. You know what I mean? And I really want to write a book one day. I really want to do that. I've always wanted to do that. And I think I finally have like a direction I want to go, and I've started to do stuff, but I struggle to legitimize it. I struggle to have the confidence to do it. I struggle to give myself grace when it's harder. I also struggle to look back on times when I thought I was writing really well, and then I feel like I hate it all. and so this book was really awesome. The tagline is A Writer's Guide to Staying Creative, Focused, and Productive All Year Round. And so I'm glad I read it completely. And then I think this is one that in the seasons, I can revisit those seasons and be reminded of just the reality of wanting to write and how when it's hard, I'm not crazy. Of course it's hard, and of course we feel those things, but there are some really good tips. There's some really good encouragement in here. I laughed. Obviously, it's a lot of writers, so it has a lot of good writing in it, just in those little short blurbs. Like, let me show you what some of the pages, like one of the pages is just like that. And so like it was a really quick read, but every single thing was really edifying, I think, when it comes to the goal of wanting to write. So like I said, I gave this 5 stars. If that is at all you, if you do write, if you want to get into writing, I think this book is really awesome, and I want to read more books like it. I think that will help me towards my goal of writing more this year and reading more. So there you go. So those are the 5 books that I read this month. I have one that I'm about to finish like in these first few days of February, so that is exciting to me. Like I said, I'm halfway through Iron Flame as well, so I will finish that this month. And then who's to say what else is going to get put on my plate for February. But I hope that if you like to read, you're getting a lot done already. And I hope that if these are of any interest to you, that this has encouraged you to read them. All great. Like I said, not a dud this month. I'm really thankful for the time I got to read. And I'm really thankful that that's something that I enjoy, and that's something that gives me rest and helps my mind. There's been a lot of times when I was really stressed, and going into this year, I really want to stress less. And I say that, and sometimes I think, duh, like nobody just wants to be stressed out. But I think I let myself be in times where I am allowed to not be. And reading helps me with that. If reading a book about dragons keeps me a little bit sane, I'm gonna keep reading books about dragons. And that's that. And I feel okay about that. Thank you for joining me. I hope you had a little cup of tea. And if not, you should go, because another thing that is helping with the stress is the peppermint tea. I highly recommend. Thanks for watching. Go read a book. Have a great day. Bye. Oh my gosh. Okay. 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 Okay, bye. Stop recording.